Welcome back to week 3. In this lecture, we'll learn more about the theories of Alfred Adler and Karen Horney. Alfred Adler was a neo-Freudian psychotherapist. He disagreed with some of Freud's basic ideas, and after Freud kicked him out of his private group, Adler created what he called individual psychology. His theory of personality emphasizes the uniqueness of our personality and also focuses on our future aspirations instead of biological instincts. Adler was born in 1870 to Jewish parents. He, at a young age, suffered from several diseases that left him permanently disabled. He had rickets as a young child, and he nearly died from pneumonia at age 4. Because of his physical limitations, he felt inferior to his older brother and to other children who he considered to be normal. He worked hard to compensate for his physical disabilities and gradually developed a sense of self-esteem through hard work. Adler earned a medical degree from the University of Vienna in 1895. He specialized in neurology and psychiatry, like many of the early psychologists. They studied in medical schools, but their interests were aligned more with psychology. In 1902, Adler began writing to Freud. Over the years, they developed a working partnership. By 1910, Adler had become a vocal critic of some of Freud's basic ideas. Freud was not a fan of dissenters. He wanted his disciples to agree with everything that he said. The next year, Freud was fed up enough with Adler that he kicked him out of his private group. Being kicked out of Freud's private group was a problem for both Adler and Carl Jung. Many of the greatest minds in psychology were a part of this group in the early 1900s. The remaining group members would then ostracize those that had been kicked out. Once Adler broke away from Freud, things began to progress quickly in his career. By 1912, he had founded a society dedicated to the promotion of individual psychology. He had gained government funding for counseling clinics in Vienna, and he had introduced group training procedures that we still use today. In 1929, Adler moved to the United States and settled in New York City. He continued to promote his theory. He wrote books, gave speeches. As Adler aged and gained notoriety, he became less tolerant of opposing views, just as Freud had become with his opposing views. Then in 1937, he died unexpectedly. There are two important ways that Adler's theory of personality differs from Freud's theory and Jung's theory, and those two differences are shown here on this slide. One, he emphasized the importance of free will in personality development. He believed that people have a say, they have choices, that they actively decide how they are going to develop and who they are going to become. He did not emphasize unconscious forces, biological forces, or childhood experiences. The second difference is that Adler focused on the future as well. He believed that people are driven by a striving for superiority. This is the idea that people have a vision of what they want to become, and this vision is essentially what motivates them, what drives them to behave in the ways that they behave. He suggested that what we strive for is based on things that we learn in childhood. These things are called ideals. Ideals then influence how we develop and how we interact with other people. I have two examples of ideals that many of us hold. One, all people are created equal. Two, all people are basically good. These are ideals that we learn in childhood these ideals influence what we strive for and how we strive for it. The self-ideal is Adler's concept for your personal perception of your ideal self and your goals for the future. Your self-ideal is essentially your self-perception set in the future. If we put all of these ideas together, his notion of free will, of ideals, and of future aspirations, we get finalism. This is the notion that we all have an ultimate goal that we're trying to reach, and we have a desire to reach that goal. Fictional finalism is the idea that sometimes those goals are unrealistic, sometimes they're more fictional than they are realistic, and those fictions, those unrealistic ideals, can sometimes create problems for us as we grow and develop. One of the most popular aspects of Adler's theory is his notion of inferiority feelings. He believed that all humans have these feelings. All humans feel inferior to others, particularly their parents in childhood. He believed that these feelings are not a sign of weakness or abnormality. It is completely normal for people to experience inferiority feelings. They are caused by the weak points in our lifestyle or defective body parts. Now you might ask, why defective body parts? Where did that come from? It came from Adler's childhood. Remember, he had rickets and pneumonia as a child, and it permanently disformed his body. So we see that creep into his theory here. These feelings develop in childhood as we realize that our parents tell us what to do, they're in control, and in order to get along with them, we have to submit to what they tell us to do. But these feelings are not all bad. In fact, these feelings are necessary because they motivate us to strive for superiority. They motivate us to do better and try to overcome the negative feeling. If we are successful in overcoming these feelings of inferiority, then compensation occurs and we grow as humans. Compensation equals growth. This desire to compensate and overcome the challenges of life, Adler said, develops in infancy and continues throughout life. When we fail to overcome these feelings, when compensation does not occur, an inferiority complex emerges. Individuals who have developed an inferiority complex tend to have low self-esteem. When they speak, you can almost hear the helplessness in their voice. They cannot imagine a situation where they're able to take life by the horns and make a change. These individuals also find it incredibly difficult to cope with life's demands and to trust other people to help them cope and get through the challenges of life. According to Adler, this complex is caused by excessive pampering, spoiling, or neglecting. If parents do everything for their children, then the child learns to become helpless. If the parents neglect children, they don't feel valued. According to Adler, these two situations can lead children to develop feelings of inferiority, which then can turn into a complex if they're unable to compensate for those feelings. You're probably familiar with Adler's other complex. Individuals with a superiority complex tend to be overconfident. They have an exaggerated view of their abilities and their accomplishments in life. They tend to be satisfied with themselves and see no real need to change, grow, become a better person, because of course they're already superior. They may also try to realize this superiority by accomplishing a lot, by going to grad school, earning a lot of money, owning things, etc. Like the inferiority complex, the superiority complex develops when people do not cope with inferiority feelings appropriately. With the inferiority complex, people don't compensate for those feelings. Individuals with a superiority complex overcompensate. They do too much to try to deal with those feelings. Adler suggested that we each have a style of life, a unique pattern of behaviors that are designed to help us overcome feelings of inferiority. Our style is our personality, our character, the self. He emphasized free will in the creation of our unique style of life. The creative power of the self is the ability to be active in the creation of one's own personality. Some people are a little bit more passive. Other people seem to really take life by the horns. Adler suggested our personality develops by the age of 4 or 5, and that it's difficult to change in adolescence and adulthood. He suggested style of life develops as a result of our conscious attitudes towards ourselves. Think about the self-ideals and our goals for the future. He also said personality development is influenced by social forces, not necessarily childhood crises. Adler focused more on the individuals around us and how they impact our personality development. So your relationship with your parents and your relationship with your siblings impact how your personality develops. Adler also suggested that our style of life can predict the other behaviors we use in daily life. He proposed 4 styles of life that we use to cope with problems in our relationships, at work, and even with intimate relationships, love life, spouses, partners. Here are Adler's 4 personality types, 4 styles of life: dominant, avoiding, getting, and socially useful. The dominant type, they tend to be more authoritative and act without considering how their actions will impact other people. For example, Adler said that sadists, delinquents, sociopaths, alcoholics, and drug abusers were all dominant personality types. The avoiding type tends to avoid problems and any possibility of failure. Someone with an avoiding personality will not challenge themselves, which often results in growth. When we overcome challenges, we grow. The avoiding type doesn't do this. They avoid challenges because they don't want to fail. The getting type of personality is the most common. This describes individuals who are very dependent on other people for their happiness, their satisfaction, their security. The socially useful type is the cooperative type. These individuals tend to work well with others and are highly sensitive to others' needs and interests, and also willing to work with them to try to meet their needs. Adler recognized the importance of social factors on the development of personality. He also recognized that in order for people to reach their personal goals, they would likely have to work with others in the family, their friends, their colleagues. He believed all humans are born with an innate desire to cooperate and work with others to achieve shared goals. Each of us has some degree of social interest. Some of us are, of course, more concerned with working with others to get things done, but we all have this innate desire, according to Adler. He also believed that mothers play a role in how this innate desire to cooperate manifests itself. He thought mothers could nurture this interest or punish, hinder, squash it. In order for children to develop appropriately, mothers need to teach their children how to cooperate and how to be a good friend. Adler thought that some of the most evil aspects of human life, like war and racism, that these aspects of life occur because the individuals involved do not have a sense of community. They don't have a sense that the people they are fighting, the people that they are hurting, are on their team, are part of their community. Let's talk about Adler's ideas regarding birth order. As we go through his predictions, I want you to think about whether his ideas match up with your life experience. So even though siblings have the same parents and live in the same house, they don't have identical social environments. Siblings have different friends, they watch different things on television, they do have different lives. Birth order is one of those social factors that impacts how personality develops over time. According to Adler, firstborn children enjoy a relatively happy, secure life with their parents' undivided attention until their sibling is born. At this point, they feel dethroned. They feel like they've lost power and are now inferior to that sibling. As a result, they tend to react stubbornly. They refuse to eat, refuse to go to sleep, refuse to do just about anything their parents ask them to do. They're then expected to take care of their siblings, teach them, watch over them, sometimes babysit them. As a result, firstborn children grow up to be more intellectually mature than other children. They learn how to delegate, they learn how to be organized, they tend to be hard workers and on the conservative side. Because second-born children never experience the powerful position that first-born children experience, they develop a little bit differently. Parents tend to use a more relaxed style with the second-born child, and they come to view the older sibling as the pace setter, the standard. However, some second-borns may react to the relaxed parenting style by becoming underachievers instead of ambitious, motivated hard workers. Adler suggested the youngest child, the last born child, is the pet of the family. They are driven to develop at an incredibly fast pace to catch up to their older siblings. Many of them, as a result, become overachievers because they've spent their entire life trying to do what their older siblings do at a younger age. Some of them may retain the helplessness from childhood and be excessively dependent on others for normal feelings of security. Adler wrote that only children remain the sole focus of their parents' attention, and they spend more time with adults than other children. Because of this, he suggested they mature early, behave more like adults, and tend to be more selfish. This is because they don't learn to share with other children. As adults, only children may be disappointed when they are not recognized for their accomplishments. In a few slides, I'm going to show you what modern research has to say about his predictions. Here's a visual summary of Adler's theory. Social forces like birth order and your relationships with other people impact how your personality manifests itself. We are driven not by innate instinctual desires. We are driven by the desire to reach the goals that we set for ourselves. Adler also relied on the case study method. His approach was a little bit more relaxed and informal than Freud's, which is a problem because Freud's approach was already relaxed and informal. What he did is he analyzed the words that his patients said and their behaviors during their therapy sessions with him. He believed that their words and their behaviors could tell him something about who they really were. He paid special attention to early recollections. He believed that our earliest memories, regardless of whether they're true, he believed these early memories were the best indicators of one's true self. So by studying early memories, we could come to learn something about people's personalities. Also, like Freud and Jung, Adler relied on dream analysis, but he looked at dreams a little bit differently. He said dreams reflect our feelings about and our intentions toward the problems in our lives, the challenges that we face on a daily basis. He argued that interpretation of one's dreams, of a patient's dreams, requires that the therapist understand that person. He did not believe that dream analysis should be conducted by a stranger. It should be conducted by a patient's therapist. He also found common elements across his patients' dreams. Those that mentioned flying also appeared to have a sense of striving towards something, striving up towards something, much like the picture on your screen. Patients who described dreams where they were falling off a bridge, falling off a cliff. I know I have nightmares all the time where I fall off a cliff into the ocean. These types of dreams, according to Adler, meant that the patients were experiencing a sense of loss, a sense of inferiority. Adler was not a big fan of personality tests. He felt like they create an artificial situation, that they don't really help the therapist understand the patient's personality. However, his theory inspired others to develop tests based on his ideas. I have 3 of those tests here. The social interest scale presents 2 adjectives and asks the test taker to choose which adjective best describes who they would like to be, their self-ideal, who they're striving to become. The social interest index asks test takers to judge the degree to which different statements describe their personal characteristics. The basic Adlerian scales of interpersonal success is a 65-item test that attempts to measure the extent to which individuals use different styles of life. You can see here this test has 5 dimensions. Adler's original theory had 4 dimensions, 4 types of personality. So what does the research say about social influences? I have 2 slides because Adler's theory has been well tested and fairly well supported. Adults who score low on inferiority feelings do tend to be more successful, confident, and persistent in trying to achieve their goals. Neglected children do tend to experience more shame, depression, PTSD, and have lower socialization skills than other children, as Adler would probably predict. Adler believed that pampered children can develop inferiority complexes. Modern research has looked at the different types of pampering that children might experience. Overindulgence occurs when parents give anything the child wants, they give it. Overpermissiveness involves allowing the children to do whatever they want, as opposed to giving them whatever they want. Overdomination involves over-controlling parents who try to dictate every step of a child's day. And then overprotection involves parents who don't let their children explore and take risks and get into trouble and get a scraped knee. What does modern research say about Adler's birth order predictions? Older siblings tend to score higher on IQ tests, just as Adler predicted. Firstborns tend to be more suggestible, more gullible. They tend to be more dependent on others and anxious in social situations. This evidence does not match up with Adler's predictions. Modern research suggests that second-born children tend to be influenced more by their older siblings than their own parents. They look at those older children as the model to follow, and Adler most likely would have agreed with this. Contrary to Adler's theory, modern research does not support the notion that only children are more selfish than other children. In fact, research suggests that only children tend to have greater initiative, higher self-esteem, greater industriousness, and higher aspirations than other children. One of the greatest strengths of Adler's theory is that it inspired so many other psychologists to study personality in an effort to explain what it is and explain how it develops. His ideas about social forces inspired Karen Horney. His notion that humans play an active role in the development of their personalities and that future goals matter to growth and development over time. These ideas inspired Abraham Maslow, and his focus on the whole person, on trying to become the best version of ourselves by overcoming the challenges of life. This idea is reflected in Gordon Allport's theory. We will cover Horney's, Maslow's, and Allport's theories in this class. Adler's theory is thought to be more optimistic than Freud's theory and Jung's theory, the notion that humans play a role in the individuals that they become is a more pleasant way of looking at human development than the idea that instincts dictate who we become. Adler did not support Freud's views on women. He did not believe that there was a biological reason for differences between men and women. He believed that men and women both experience inferiority feelings, and there's no such thing as penis envy. Some of his concepts had a lasting effect on the field of psychology. His ideas about inferiority feelings, the inferiority complex, the process of compensation, and some of his predictions about birth order. Like Freud and Jung, Adler's methods were less than systematic and too subjective. It's difficult to replicate his observations because he did not verify the accuracy of his patients' reports, and he did not explain the procedures that he used to analyze the data that he did collect. While his theory is praised for its emphasis on free will, his denial of determinism of biological influences is a problem. Modern research has been able to show that personality is influenced in at least some way by biology.